Good call.
Okay, so call the meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to go through the agenda that was attached to the invite? Are there any changes or additions that we want to make to the agenda as it exists? Nope. Not seeing any. Okay, can we get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Send Bill. All in favor of the agenda? Does anybody have a pecuniary interest that they would like to declare relative to any of the items that are currently on the agenda? I have one listed on the closed session February 14th meeting.
Yeah,
Just for
because he
adopting
wasn't
the-
in attendance, you have to declare him next.
So what do I do on this? Do I have to read it out or is it suffice to the agenda?
It's fine.
Suffice. All right. Okay, the minutes for the meeting of February 14th are in the package. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any errors or omissions that we would need to address with respect to the minutes, February 14th? Can I get a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? Bill? Sam? All in favor? Okay. Over to you.
Sure.
Okay.
So, first we'll talk, an update on the industrial land. We're currently, as I mentioned in the past, we're conducting environmental assessment of our East Bay / Wood Park Court Park. The EA is being conducted so we can look at putting a road down the middle of it, so extending the existing Wood Park Court. Approximately 300 meters, depends on what comes back on the EA. We've completed a survey of the lands now, so it's been mapped out completely, so we understand what we're dealing with. So the next phase is, I've actually have a meeting tomorrow to get an update where we are on the EA, but once the EA is completed, we'll be looking at putting a proposal together to get the road pushed through. We'll be funding that through reserves that we have from land sales, previous land sales, so that will open up that park for us to actually start selling properties. Now, we do have some potential interest in 10 acres already there, so. Yeah, so that's the industrial land update. That one's,
So in behind that, I'm assuming you're looking at where the next locations are.
Yes.
Starting to think years ahead, right?
yeah, so strategically, we've identified a few areas which, you know, that we'll actually get to pursuing. Plus, we want to get this one done first, but we do have an actual 10-year strategic plan as far as industrial land. I think right now we can accommodate probably the next 4 years with potential properties that have been identified. So we are actively looking for new properties. And we have a upcoming conference call with a new group that is using GIS to identify different areas available in different cities. And we've been contacted to see if we want to have an initial discussion to see how they could support us and help us. So, with that.
What's the timeline like? So if you started today, like how long would it take to get through the EA process, to get the funding committee and all those sort of
Right. So with the EAA process, it's a little bit complex because we started it in the fall. And you basically have to go through a cycle to see that if there are any species there, i.e. butterflies, things like that, that could be impacted negatively by activity on the land. So typically an EA can take around 6 months, and that's what we're looking at and counting on right now. But you don't know until you get into the spring and you take a look at the fauna in the area. And then depending on what's found, that can determine is there going to be another round or more in-depth EA required.
Any other questions? Rick?
Is that including, I know the province owns a bunch of land over on Black Road. There appraisals on it years ago. Is that, or can you even talk about that right now, where you're just, or are you looking for private land as well to buy? and then, or just private land to zone for industrial. Is that included in your study?
Yes, yeah, so all of it, and yeah, that's, I mean, we're looking at every possible vacancy right now. We did do a bit of our own GIS work just to see what's out there. So Black Road obviously was identified as one in the past, and there are other locations within the city that we looked at.
So for obvious reasons, you don't get into specifics because it might drive the price up, but
Correct.
the idea is you're looking all over and you're fairly thorough about going through the process to make sure that.
Yes.
Is that good, Sam?
Any further questions on that?
So, first item of new business, the delegated authority to executive members. So this is an item that, came up, Robin, correct me on the, agreement. One of the funding requests that we had. This came up inside the documents. Okay, so the board approved a funding request. EDC to fund.
The airport one, yeah.
And then the next course of business, of course, is to put together the funding agreement. And then once the funding agreement is in place, the funding agreement needs to be executed. So the question to the board is, if the board approves the funding, and then staff go away, put together the funding, and we're back and forth a little bit with respect to that. Do we have authorization to sign the agreement, given the fact that the funding is approved? Or do we want to bring back all agreements back to this board and have the board go through the approve the execution? I think it could go either way because the funding's been approved, and really it's the mechanics of putting the agreement together, which is the administrative and staff function, and then two officers of the company that be required to execute it. So, you know, your chair, vice chair. But we're just looking for some general feedback. I think there's been a practice where we've brought them back to the board, I think, but now we're starting to see quite a few. I'm wondering if that's right. Any thoughts?
Let's just basically review is what we see. We would agree to it, they'd bring it back, and then there'd be a bit of a review session and then sign off, so.
So there's two options. The one option is the executive delegates to the officers, so the chair, vice chair, treasurer, for two of them to execute the agreement that's previously been authorized. The other option is that the full board authorize the agreement and come back to the full board. We're not in any capacity on the board as a director here. We're not acting as somebody who has the competency to review. So we're relying on staff for legal agreements. And so I don't know if we wanted to review that by any money, or simply whether it covers the original authorization. But certainly would be interested. I think Joe's.
Could I chime in for a bit?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the circumstance, if I might suggest. In other words, if we pass a resolution that defines and leaves no matter to be left to discretion, then you could pass a resolution saying we approve X, Y, and Z, and that the executive are permitted, or we consent to the executive signing the necessary contract. But if there's something else that has to be attended to, if I was the person being asked to sign, unless it's been approved by the board, I don't know if I would feel comfortable in making a decision that requires some of my discretion and not gone to the board.
Well, I think.
So for example, if you have a resolution saying the EDC authorizes is contributing X number of dollars for a particular matter, fine, then you could say, then the executive is with signing authority is permitted to sign that. But if you have to look at the contract, the final contract, to approve that contract, then it seems to me, I don't know if I'd want that responsibility without the board approving it. I don't know if I'm making it clear.
Yes.
Well, I guess like an example of a heritage fund or a FedNor contract, which is a boilerplate, but they're very standard. This question is, do we want to put a dollar limit, or do we want to say if it's a heritage fund or a senior level of government contract, should the board put it to the board and have it voted on? So I don't know.
Yeah, I would think a heritage fund or something like that we were partnering up would have responsibilities that we would be taking on as part from the organization's perspective. And in my mind, that would need to go to the board to approve the fact of taking on responsibilities. I think the ones where we're talking about here is, as a board, we say we're going to give XYZ movie company $25,000 to support something they're doing. And staff go away and they put together the agreement on that 25,000, would make sure that, certain milestones have to be hit and things like that for the money to be dispersed. Then that agreement comes back and it's the 25,000 that's approved, right? Are we authorized as the executive to execute that paperwork? Or do we go and bring it back to the full board, given the fact that we meet every 2 months, right? And so from the timing perspective and logistics perspective, is that the way we want to do it? The alternative, I think, Bill, what you're talking about is if we were to partner with NOHFC on something and receive some funding, we would be incurring some responsibilities, potential liabilities as a result of that. That should come to the full board. Okay. I think it's consistent with the previous board's already approval to give 25,000 to XYZ. And I didn't want to sign them. I don't think you wanted to sign them until we had full understanding of what the rest of you thought. But I think, from my own perspective, I would think this is just mechanics. It's already been approved. But certainly didn't want to do that.
Who would have that signing authority?
The two of the officers of the company, which is the chair, vice chair, and the treasurer.
Especially circumstance where the city's taking the lead on it, let's say, and doing the administration, and we're also contributing that, we're taking it, the city is doing the due diligence, and we're just contributing, as part of your due diligence. And
Yeah, like if, as a board, if we were having something done on our own, we would have independent. Right? And then we would use that for the board to act. The board isn't acting as, even if you are a lawyer, Joe's on this board, he's not acting. He's simply acting. And so, but we're not doing that. The city's putting together the agreements.
I'd be interested in what Joe has to say. How do you feel about that, Joe?
If I heard everything right, audio is not the best sometimes, but I don't think that Robert and I disagree significantly as what we're saying. In other words, there are certain situations where we agree to contribute X number of dollars and we pass a resolution to do that, and doesn't require any further board approval of any kind, discretionary or otherwise. I think the executive can sign. If we have to have the final contract go along with payment of some funds, then the contract has to be authorized and approved by the board. That is, I think, the play. If we approve a contract today on a particular matter, requiring us to advance funds pursuant to that agreement, I don't think you need to have the matter come back to the board for the executive to sign the check. If it's dealt with in the contract already that we have to pay X number of dollars. Historically, that's how we've done it. Is that fair, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can capture this in some wording here, and maybe we can talk about whether it's sufficient, but that the executive be authorized to execute customary documents related to already approved board expenditures. That about right, Joe?
Well, you have a problem with what is historically the same document all the time. That's pretty rare.
I just said customary.
It's pretty rare. There's always a difference, if nothing else, the amount that EDC is going to be on the hook for.
I'm not following you, Joe.
Well, you're suggesting that we're going to have a lot of instances where you have a boilerplate agreement that we've done many times before. If that's the case, then it should be on the agenda when you approve and authorize the advancement of funds. Then it says, we agreed to advance X number of dollars or contribute certain amount of money in accordance with the terms of the draft agreement or the boilerplate agreement that's been looked at. If it's a boilerplate, then it's easy for Rick to give us a copy of it. It's not going to change. I just don't see that happening that many times where you have a boilerplate agreement. If it's a FedNor application and FedNor approves the funding and we're second because it's contingent on the FedNor approval, then if FedNor signs the agreement, then it's the same information that we had at the meeting, then I understand in that type of situation, it may be okay. But, what type of contracts are we going to say are boilerplate or the normal? Rick, you can help us out on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you captured what I was saying there, though. Maybe
Oh, I'm sorry.
voice doesn't carry. So what I think what I'm trying to capture here, Joe, is that we have a request from XYZ movie company that comes to the board. And they're asking for the EDC to provide $25,000 towards their movie production. We look at that and we as a board debate that and we agree that we're going to commit $25,000 to that movie production. City staff take away and put together an agreement with the movie company for the $25,000 with some standard milestones. They have to show some expenditures or the standard stuff that the city would put in those agreements. And then those agreements come back for us to disperse the funds. In order for us to disperse the funds, we have to sign the agreement. That agreement is simply the funding that is consistent with the $25,000 that was approved at the board. And so my question is does that full agreement, standard agreement that the city would put together with XYZ movie company need to come back for full board approval? Or is it sufficient for staff to do it if it is a standard type agreement that is consistent with the motion that was passed by the board? So the money hasn't changed, the conditions we put on it are in there, that kind of stuff. And I guess that's a question. I'm happy to bring them all back. I'm just sensitive to the fact that we meet every 2 months.
I don't think the city staff can sign that contract without that contract or agreement being approved by the board at a board meeting. And it probably has to be at a public meeting as well. That's the problem that I'm having. Once you approve the contract,
Joe,
you can cut the check anytime after that.
I think there's also no substantial changes. What was approved from the board?
So, yeah.
But we're not, from what I'm understanding here, Joe, you're not gonna be providing a legal opinion. You've already.
No, I'm not.
You've been running it by the legal department. So if we had a meeting here, I'm not gonna question the legality of the contract.
Right.
You've already approved what they're doing.
Yeah.
I would just see it as redundant to go back to the board to rehash what we've already done. I could be wrong in that, but I think it's a stuff that would be necessary. If you've taken the example that you've given on this grant that they're looking for on the Queen Street example, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's where we were looking for some clarity. So to me, we're not acting as legal counsel, right? So we're bringing a contract back to us that really we're looking for. Is it the same number and does it have the conditions in it that we authorize?
And it would have been reviewed by the city
Solicitor.
legal
Yeah.
counsel, so.
The City of Sault Ste. Marie Legal Department, it refuses to give legal advice to the EDC.
You do?
So these
They do.
agreements are funding that the city is contributing to and the EDC.
Yeah.
It's always.
That's a whole different issue, Robin. We're talking about EDC money being spent and protecting the interests of EDC. You're not going to get a legal opinion from the legal department. We're going to have to go outside that and get it.
Right, so those agreements, we don't draft for you guys. If it's funding that it's just the EDC and a proponent, we've never drafted those for you guys.
I've never seen one.
I haven't.
So it would not be agreement with the CBC that you have for funding be an example of that?
Yeah,
We were not involved with that in any way, shape or form.
I thought we were talking strictly like the airport is a perfect example. The city's contributing 100,000
Yeah.
and you guys are contributing 40, so we're partners.
Yeah, I'll leave the subject matter on this basis. Unless there's a specific bylaw within the corporation, whether it's private or otherwise, the board has to approve the expenditure of funds. Typically, you have a bylaw that says management can spend up to X number of dollars, after which they have to come back and get a resolution of the board. That's the internal operation even at City Hall right now. You have a discretion to spend X number of dollars.
Joe, we're
And
not,
that's covered by a general bylaw.
we're not talking about the expenditure. We're saying that the board would have already approved the expenditure. What we're basically saying is, do we have to bring back the agreement, like the letter that goes with the funds that the person signs off on,
Well,
to the board for approval, or is the original approval of the expenditure sufficient? I think that's where I think we're kind of bouncing around here. That the question
no,
is,
but you have to authorize, the board has to authorize two things. A, the execution of the agreement. You have to authorize the signing of the contract. Secondly, then, based upon the terms of that contract, you may have to pass another resolution for the expenditure or issuance of the check. You could pass one resolution, and that is, we approve the contract, and we authorize the executive to sign it, and at the same time, advance funds. That's it. You can't do it halfway. In any event, that's my piece on that subject.
I appreciate your piece on it.
I leave to Robin to get an opinion from City Hall.
So I appreciate your piece on it, Joe. I think different organizations do things differently with respect to what can be signed, what has to go to the board for approval and what has to go to the executive for approval. I think what we were trying to do here was, in the case where it's pretty straightforward, it's consistent with what the board has approved from an expenditure perspective, is the board executive, the chair, vice chair, and the treasurer, who is the one who can sign a check on behalf of the board, authorized to sign the agreement. I think we've gotten to a place here where I don't know that we have an agreement, and so I think I'm just gonna leave this one be. Because it's probably spent more time on it than I figured we were. But at this point, we will just bring the agreements back to the board and the board. You okay with that? Yeah. All right. All right, next one, we have motion rolling pictures. Actually, it turns out it's 25,000. That was a coincidence. I wasn't thinking- I was saying motion.
So I apologize for the old application that we're using on this one. We were waiting to get the program renewed, as you know, in the fall. It was approved at the end of December, so we are rebranding it and bringing out a new document, which we'll have very shortly, so it'll look a little different than this one. But for the purposes of expediency, we went with this document to make sure we captured all the information. So they're requesting $25,000. This is Rolling Pictures. Probably familiar with them in town here. Production company. Right now, they're looking to upgrade their equipment and do a little bit of expansion. They're protecting between 10 and 12 jobs that are existing right now. They're looking to add 4 highly specialized jobs that pay in the vicinity of $70,000 a year. And they're looking for support. They've already started. In fact, they were originally looking for a larger sum, but because we were in the process of waiting for approvals to get the new E EGCIP program going, they said, well, we're gonna just get going and we're gonna start doing our own thing anyhow. So they did, but with these type of programs with the E EGCIP, we cannot retroactive. So we had to go back to them and say, well, if you're gonna start now, we can't honor any of the money you're spending until we can get this new agreement in place that's gonna be authorized by the province, which it is. And now we can take it and say, yes, from this date forward, once we get the approval of the board, that we can take it, well, board and council, then we can start paying. So, it's a good deal, I think, for us. I think the, Rolling Pictures is really helping us get on the map from a standpoint of being a city that can provide value-added services to productions, whether they be TV or film. I think this is a good opportunity, good job creation. Any questions on it? Nothing.
Anybody have any questions for Rick on this one?
Just in general, how is the film industry doing, Susan, compared to say, 5, 10 years?
I think we're on an upward trend. You know, there have been, there's been constant activity. I don't have all the numbers. I can get them from tourism, and we've got a person dedicated to that. In fact, if you want an update at the next meeting, I can probably either give it to you myself or bring somebody in and we'll give you an update on where we are with that. But I know it's been fairly positive as far as attracting people. The last one, Tales from the Void, how many people were involved in the suit? Probably.
There's about 40 actors and 80 crew, most of them local.
I guess my question is sort of coming out of COVID, are we, back to where we were prior to COVID hitting, or sort of?
Anecdotally, I'd say yes,
Okay.
but I wasn't here before COVID, so I can't really tell you.
Right.
I'd have to get the numbers to tell you straight up.
Any other questions for Rick on this one? Anything online? I can't see Gerald with the captioning there, so. So it's not you, Gerald, it's the closed captioning is covering your screen up. So, do you have anything or? Oh, never mind.
Good.
Okay, Joe, you good? Okay.
Good.
So it's a,
I'm good.
good, thanks, Joe. There's a 6.2 has a motion that it's resolved that the EDC board endorses the request from Rolling Pictures in the amount of $25,000 from the CDF and recommends that city council approve this request. So is there a mover and seconder? Okay, seconder, Gerald, all in favor? Unanimous. Fantastic. All right. Item 7 is the upcoming meetings, April 10th, April 17th, June 12th, June 19th. Once we get into September, I may have a conflict or two here. Any questions on those?
I will be unable to be there on the 17th of April.
17th of April, okay, fair enough. We'll make sure we save all the contract stuff for when you get back.
Go ahead. God bless you all. It's
All right.
not a problem until it's a problem. I'm trying to protect you from that problem.
Number 8, so time for adjournment. We need a mover and a seconder. Okay, we have Bill, we have Gannon, all in favor. All right, we're good. Thanks, everybody.